Rain poured over the lonely highway as Emma Williams gripped the steering wheel tighter, her eyes struggling to follow the yellow lines under the storm's fury. The wipers moved back and forth, but the water kept coming, thick and heavy. Her son, Ethan, sat quietly beside her, earbuds in, staring out the fogged window. They had been driving for hours, heading back to Seattle after visiting Emma's sister in Oregon. It was supposed to be a calm trip, but the storm had turned everything into a blur of wind, rain, and thunder. When lightning flashed across the sky, Emma's heart jumped. She slowed down and sighed. "We can't keep going like this," she muttered. Ethan looked at her, worry in his eyes. "Maybe we should find a place to stop for the night," he suggested. Emma nodded, scanning the road ahead until she spotted a small glowing sign, Evergreen Hill Inn. The old wooden sign swayed in the wind, but it looked safe enough. They pulled into the parking lot, water splashing under the tires. The hotel stood like a warm light in the middle of the storm. 2 floors, yellow lights shining through rain-streaked windows, and a front porch wrapped with hanging flower baskets, now dripping with rain. Emma parked and turned off the engine. For a moment they just sat there listening to the rain. "Come on," she said finally, forcing a smile. "Let's get inside before we drown in here." Inside the lobby, it smelled like old wood and cinnamon. A fireplace burned softly in the corner, giving the room a cozy glow. Behind the counter stood a woman with kind eyes and grey hair tied in a bun. She looked up as Emma approached, shaking the rain from her coat. "Good evening," the woman said warmly. "Rough night out there." "You can say that again," Emma replied. "Do you have any rooms available?" The woman clicked through the computer, then gave an apologetic look. "I'm afraid we're full. The storm brought in a lot of travelers tonight." "But," she hesitated, "we do have one last room available. It's got 1 queen-sized bed." Emma paused, unsure. She turned toward Ethan, who was dripping wet but trying not to look too tired. "It's fine, Mom," he said quietly. "We'll share. It's just one night." Emma gave a small laugh, part nervous, part relieved. "All right, we'll take it." She signed the paper and took the key. The woman smiled kindly. "Room 207, up the stairs, second door on the right. Stay safe and make yourselves comfortable." They climbed the stairs slowly, their shoes squeaking against the old wooden floor. The hallway smelled faintly of pine and lemon polish. When they reached the room, Emma unlocked the door and stepped inside. It was small but warm. A single bed neatly made, a small lamp on the nightstand, and a window overlooking the storm outside. Ethan dropped his backpack by the chair and rubbed his hair dry with a towel. "It's nicer than I expected," he said. Emma smiled faintly, setting her bag down. "It'll do." For a few minutes, neither spoke. The sound of rain against the window filled the silence. Emma sat on the edge of the bed, exhausted. She hadn't realized how tired she was until now. The long drive, the storm, the memories of years gone by, it all weighed on her. Ethan sat by the window, looking out. The streetlights blurred through the rain. "It's kind of peaceful," he said softly. "When you're not driving through it." Emma chuckled. "You always liked the rain, even as a kid." He smiled without turning around. "You used to say it sounded like music." Her eyes softened. "It still does." The wind howled outside, but inside, the room felt strangely calm. The warmth from the heater hummed softly, wrapping the small space in comfort. Yet beneath that peace, Emma felt something deeper. A quiet ache she couldn't quite name. It wasn't sadness exactly, but something close. Maybe it was nostalgia. Maybe it was guilt for how distant she and Ethan had grown since he left for college. She watched him as he leaned against the window. Tall, quiet, lost in thought. He looked older now, more like a man than the boy she remembered. Time had moved so fast. Too fast. You okay, Mom? He asked suddenly, noticing her distant stare. She nodded quickly. Just tired. It's been a long day. He smiled faintly. We'll rest. Tomorrow will be better. Emma nodded, forcing a small smile. Yeah, tomorrow will be better. When she turned off the lamp, the room dimmed to a soft glow from the window. The rain outside became gentler, like a lullaby. She lay down on one side of the bed while Ethan stretched out on the other. The space between them felt wide, even though they were just inches apart. Emma stared at the ceiling, listening to the rhythm of the rain. Memories drifted in and out. The days when Ethan was a boy, running through puddles, calling her name with laughter that echoed through the yard. Now he was grown, with his own world, his own dreams. But tonight, in this one small room, life had brought them back together. As her eyes grew heavy, she felt the quiet comfort of knowing he was close. No matter how far life took them, this moment reminded her that love, real, quiet, unspoken love, never fades. Outside, thunder rolled across the hills and lightning flashed behind the clouds. But inside, mother and son drifted to sleep, safe and warm, unaware that this one night, this one room, would open their hearts in ways they never expected. And as the storm carried on through the night, the world outside kept moving. But inside that little hotel room, time seemed to pause, holding two hearts that had been apart for too long, gently bringing them back together. Morning came slowly, with soft grey light slipping through the curtains. The rain hadn't stopped, but it had turned into a calm drizzle. The world outside looked washed clean, fresh and quiet. Inside the small hotel room, Emma Williams sat on the edge of the bed, holding a cup of warm coffee. She looked peaceful, but inside, her heart carried a mix of warmth and sadness. The storm had forced them to stop, but maybe that was exactly what she needed. Time alone with her son after so many years of drifting apart. Ethan was still half asleep, lying on his side, his hair messy, breathing slow and even. For a moment, Emma just watched him. It reminded her of when he was a little boy, when mornings were full of laughter and cereal boxes, when life was simple. Now he was 22, grown, independent, and a stranger in many ways. College, work, and distance had built a quiet wall between them, one made not of anger but silence. When he finally opened his eyes, he smiled softly. "Morning, Mom." "Morning," she said. "How'd you sleep?" "Better than I expected. Guess the rain helped." He sat up, stretching. "Feels weird, though, being stuck in one room like this." Emma chuckled. "We used to share hotel rooms all the time when you were little." "Yeah, but back then you'd steal all the blankets." She laughed quietly. "You never stopped reminding me of that." They shared an easy silence for a few moments, the kind that felt calm but heavy with things unsaid. Emma could feel the weight of years pressing on her chest. There were so many things she wanted to tell him. How proud she was, how much she missed him, how sorry she was for the distance that had grown between them after the divorce. But words were never easy when hearts had grown careful. Ethan looked out the window at the fog-covered hills. "I forgot how quiet it gets outside the city." "It's nice." Emma nodded. "Sometimes I miss that quiet. The city never really stops." He turned toward her, studying her face. "You look tired, Mom. You've been working too much again, haven't you?" She smiled softly. "Maybe, but I'm fine." He frowned slightly, not convinced. "You always say that." The truth was, she wasn't fine. She hadn't been for years. After the divorce, she'd buried herself in work to fill the empty spaces in her life. And as Ethan grew older and busier, Those spaces only got larger. But she didn't want him to worry. He had his own world now. They decided to go downstairs for breakfast. The hotel's dining area was small, with a fireplace, wooden tables, and the smell of pancakes filling the air. A few travelers sat nearby, talking softly. Emma and Ethan took a seat by the window. They ate quietly for a while, until Ethan broke the silence. "Do you ever think about Dad?" Emma looked up, surprised by the question. "Sometimes," she said honestly. "Not the bad parts, though. Just the moments before things changed." He nodded, staring at his plate. "I don't really remember much. I was too young when you both separated. But I remember how you used to pretend everything was fine, even when it wasn't." Her heart tightened. "I was trying to protect you," she said gently. "I know," he replied. "But I wish you didn't have to do it alone." Emma felt a lump rise in her throat. She wanted to say she'd done her best, that she'd only wanted him to have a normal life. But the words caught in her chest. Instead, she reached across the table and touched his hand. "You turned out to be a good man, Ethan. That's what matters to me." He smiled faintly, his eyes softening. "That's because of you." The rain tapped gently against the window. For the first time in years, the wall between them began to crack. They talked for hours about his classes, his friends, the city, and even his dreams. He told her how he sometimes felt lost, unsure of where he was headed. She told him how proud she was, even when she didn't say it enough. When they went back to their room, the world outside had turned grey again. The clouds rolled over the hills, heavy and quiet. Emma sat by the window, looking out, while Ethan packed his things. There was a calmness between them now, a quiet understanding. "I don't visit enough," he said after a while. She turned to him. "You have your own life. That's how it should be." "Still," he said softly, "I don't want to drift away completely." Those words warmed her heart. She stood, walked to him, and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You never could," she said. "No matter how far you go, you'll always have a home." He smiled and nodded, but his eyes glistened a little. There was emotion there. Love, guilt, gratitude, all mixed into one. Outside, thunder rumbled again in the distance. The storm wasn't over yet. The lights in the room flickered for a moment before settling back. Emma looked up, a little nervous, but Ethan smiled reassuringly. "Don't worry, I'll light a candle if it goes out." She laughed softly. "You've grown up too fast." "Maybe," he said, "but you're still the same mom who tries to act brave in storms." Her laughter faded into a smile, tender and full of unspoken emotion. For the first time in years, the distance between them didn't feel like a wall, just a space they could cross if they kept talking. Kept trying as the day faded into evening. They sat by the window again, watching the rain fall. The world outside was quiet, peaceful. Inside, their hearts felt lighter, closer. It was still just one small hotel room, but somehow, it had become the place where two people who'd grown apart found their way back to each other. And as the storm slowly began to rise again outside, Emma knew this night wasn't finished. Something deeper was still waiting to be said. Something the rain hadn't washed away yet. By evening, the rain had grown heavy again, drumming softly against the hotel window. The grey sky had darkened, and thunder rolled faintly in the distance. Emma Williams stood near the small table, sipping tea, while Ethan leaned against the wall, scrolling through his phone. The quiet between them wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It felt easy, natural. After the long morning of conversations, something inside both of them had shifted. The electricity flickered once, then twice, before the lights went out completely. The room fell into darkness, except for the faint glow of lightning outside. "Well," Emma said, her voice calm. I guess we're back to candlelight. Ethan chuckled and found the emergency candle the hotel had left near the dresser. When he lit it, the small flame filled the room with a golden glow. Shadows danced along the walls, and for a moment, the place felt almost magical. Emma sat on the bed, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders. This reminds me of when you were little, she said softly. You used to get scared during storms, so we'd make shadow shapes on the wall until you fell asleep. Ethan smiled faintly. I remember. You'd make rabbits, and I'd try to make dragons. You were terrible at it, she teased. I was 7. He laughed. Their laughter filled the small room, cutting through the sound of thunder. It felt like they had gone back in time just for a moment, to when life was simple, and love didn't need to be spoken out loud. While the laughter faded, replaced by a quiet calm, Emma watched the candle flicker, her thoughts drifting. You know, she said quietly, sometimes I wonder if I did enough for you after the divorce. I tried to be both parents, but there were days when I just couldn't. Ethan looked at her, surprised by the honesty in her voice. Mom, he said gently, you did more than enough. You gave up everything for me. I never doubted that. She looked down, her eyes glistening in the candlelight. Still, I wish things had been different. I wish your father and I had handled it better. I wanted you to have a peaceful home. He leaned forward, his tone calm but certain. I had that, Mom. You made it peaceful. You were my home. Her chest tightened at his words. For years, she had carried guilt like a shadow, believing she had failed him somehow. Hearing him say that lifted something heavy off her heart. The storm outside grew louder, and lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the window. Emma looked out at the rain. It's strange, she murmured. Storms used to scare you. Now they scare me. Ethan smiled softly. That's because you're always thinking ahead about what could go wrong. I just let it happen. She gave a small laugh. You get that calmness from your father. But the caring part, that's all me. He grinned. I'll take that as a compliment. As thunder rolled again, the candlelight flickered, and Emma found herself studying him closely, the shape of his face, the maturity in his eyes, the kindness she'd always admired. He wasn't the little boy she used to tuck in at night. He was a man now, one who had grown through struggle and love. And for the first time, she truly saw that. They sat quietly for a while, wrapped in the warm glow of the candle, the world outside roaring but far away. The air between them felt heavy with emotion, comfort, love, and a little sadness for all the years they had lost to silence. Do you ever think about coming back home after college? Emma asked softly. Ethan shrugged. Sometimes. I love the city, but it's lonely. Everything moves fast there. No one really talks anymore. Sometimes I miss this quiet moment sitting with you. Her heart filled with warmth. You can always come home, you know. The door's still open. He smiled, his eyes gentle. I know. I just needed to hear you say it. For a long time, neither spoke. The rain became softer, falling like a lullaby against the glass. Ethan stood and went to the window, staring out at the dark hills and glowing streetlights in the distance. You know, he said after a moment, storms always look worse when you're driving through them. But from here they look kind of beautiful. Emma looked at him, hearing the meaning behind his words. Life had been a storm for both of them, pain, distance, uncertainty, but now, from where they stood, it looked softer, almost peaceful. She walked over and stood beside him. Maybe that's what time does, she said. It makes the storms look smaller once they've passed. He turned toward her with a smile that carried both affection and understanding. Yeah, I guess it does. The power returned suddenly, the lights humming back to life. but neither of them moved. The soft lamp glow filled the room, and the candle's flame flickered out, leaving a wisp of smoke curling upward. Emma took a deep breath, feeling an unexpected calm settle in her chest. "It's strange," she said quietly. "I didn't realize how much I missed just talking like this." Ethan nodded. "Me too. Life gets busy, but I don't ever want to lose this again." She smiled, her eyes warm with emotion. "Then don't. Some things are worth holding on to." He looked at her, and for a second, the silence between them said everything words couldn't. The years apart, the misunderstandings, the quiet love, they were all there, gently understood, gently forgiven. When Emma finally lay down that night, she felt lighter. Ethan sat by the window for a while longer, watching the rain ease into mist. The world outside was dark, but inside, something had changed. The distance between them had finally faded, replaced by something deeper, something real. Before falling asleep, Ethan whispered, almost to himself, "It's funny how one storm can bring everything back together." And as the last raindrops fell, Emma smiled in her sleep. The storm had given them what life had slowly taken away, a chance to feel close again. Not as mother and child separated by time, but as two souls who had found each other once more. The storm had finally passed. When Emma Williams woke up, the hotel room was filled with soft morning light. The sound of rain was gone, replaced by the quiet hum of the wind and birds singing somewhere outside. For a moment she lay still, letting the warmth of the sunlight touch her face. The night had been long and full of emotions she hadn't expected, but now, everything felt calm, like the world had pressed a gentle reset button. Ethan was already awake, sitting by the window with a cup of coffee in his hand. His eyes looked peaceful as he stared out at the mist-covered hills. Emma watched him quietly, realizing how much he had changed. There was a steadiness in him, a quiet strength she hadn't seen before. He looked like a man who had finally found his balance, and she felt proud. "Morning," she said softly. He turned and smiled. "Morning, Mom. You slept well?" She stretched, smiling back. "Better than I have in months." The air smelled clean, fresh from the rain. Outside, the wet trees sparkled under the new light. The world looked like it had been washed and made new again. Emma stood by the window beside him, sipping her own coffee. "Look at that," she said quietly. "You'd never guess there was a storm last night." Ethan nodded. "That's life, isn't it? Things can look broken one night and beautiful the next." She looked at him, touched by how simply he'd said it. Maybe he didn't realize it, but his words carried weight, the kind of wisdom that only comes after living through difficult seasons. They spent a few quiet moments watching the morning fog lift from the trees. The hotel felt almost empty now, the other guests already on the road. But for Emma, there was no hurry to leave. She wanted to hold on to this calm just a little longer. Ethan started packing, folding his clothes neatly. "I'll grab the keys when you're ready," he said. Emma nodded but didn't move. Her eyes lingered on the bed, the candle on the knitstand, the window with water droplets slowly sliding down. Every small thing in the room held a memory from the night before. Laughter, tears, words they had needed to say for years. Finally, she said softly, "Ethan, can we talk for a minute before we go?" He stopped and turned to her, curious. "Of course." She hesitated, then spoke honestly. "I know I haven't been perfect. I made mistakes after your father left. I worked too much, worried too much, and I stopped seeing how fast you were growing. But last night reminded me that no matter how far apart we get, I still have you. And that's everything I'll ever need." Ethan's expression softened. He stepped closer, his voice gentle. Mum, you don't have to apologize. You gave me everything. You were always there, even when I didn't deserve it. I just didn't know how to say thank you before. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't heavy. They were light, full of peace. She smiled and reached up to cup his face like she used to when he was little. You just did, she whispered. They both laughed quietly, and for the first time in years, there were no walls, no distance, just understanding. When they finally walked downstairs, the lobby was quiet. The old lady at the counter smiled as they returned the key. Storm's gone, she said cheerfully. Hope you both got some rest. Emma smiled warmly. We did. Thank you. Outside, the car was covered in raindrops that shimmered under the morning sun. As they loaded their bags, the world around them smelled of wet earth and pine. The clouds were clearing, and the blue sky was beginning to show Dot as they drove down the winding mountain road. Emma kept glancing at her son, his profile against the light, his calm focus on the road. Everything about him reminded her that time never stops. But love never fades either. Ethan turned the radio on, and soft music filled the car. Do you ever think, he said suddenly, that maybe the storm wasn't an accident? Maybe it was supposed to happen, to slow us down, make us stop and talk again. Emma smiled. Maybe it was. Life has strange ways of bringing people back to what matters. They passed small cottages, shining rivers, and patches of sunlight breaking through the trees. The world seemed alive again. Emma leaned her head back against the seat, feeling a peace she hadn't felt in years. After a long silence, Ethan spoke again, his tone thoughtful. You know, I think I'll visit more often. Not because I feel guilty, but because I want to. I miss home. Her heart swelled with quiet joy. I'd like that, she said softly. The house feels too big without you. He grinned. Then I'll bring the noise back. She laughed, shaking her head. You always did. Hours later, as they reached the highway leading to Seattle, the city skyline appeared in the distance, faint and silver under the sunlight. Emma looked at it, then at Ethan, and realized how different this drive felt compared to the night before. It wasn't just a trip home anymore.